First of all, sponsoring today's class, Jeff and Lori Goldchin, with prayers to Hashem for comfort, healing, and recovery to all those in our community that are in need, a refuah shalema to all those that need it. This Monday evening, we have a lecture over here at 8 p.m. with Rabbi Dr. Label Wolf, a Kabbalist from Australia, from Melbourne, Australia. Leah Cohen was, I think, the first to discover him many, many years ago, and he's been now here more than any other speaker that we've hosted, Label Wolf. Master the flow of time. Extend your life, stretch time, minimize space, and deepen consciousness. I have no idea what he's going to talk about, but it sounds fascinating. Monday evening at 8 o'clock. It's not going to be on Zoom, so you got to come in-house. Make your reservations at jewishacademy.com. We're also going to be doing a live Zoom hookup from Jerusalem with Sapir Cohen. Sapir was held hostage in the tunnels in Gaza. She actually came face to face with Sinwar. She was released on the 55th day of her captivity. Her story is harrowing of what she experienced, what she went through, but at the same time quite inspirational. She talks about her faith. That was the only thing that got her through. She talks about her interaction with other hostages. Her own fiance is still held hostage, and today on the news, just today, there was a videotape that came out with one of the hostages. That's her fiance. So she knows today that he's alive. What he said, I'm sure, is just following script. It's the first time she now knows her fiance is still alive. She's going to be doing a talk just for our community that is on Sunday, November 24th at 11 a.m. So those listening all over the world, you can sign up as well, jewishacademy.com. We'll send you the link, but you do have to sign up in advance. It's a free Zoom, but again, you do need to register in advance. Do so soon. As soon as we fill our amount that we can have on Zoom, you won't be able to get in. So get your Zoom link today. Sunday, November 24th, 11 a.m., My Nightmare in a Hamas Tunnel. A former hostage shares her harrowing ordeal. There's also going to be a movie that's showed called The World Will Tremble. That's on Monday, December 2nd. That film has not been seen. It's going to premiere right here in the Agora Hills, and then it's going to be released to all the theaters a little bit thereafter. So if you want to be at the premiere, the director, writer of this film will be on hand here in the Agora Hills, and I'll take your questions after the showing of the film. Again, the film is called The World Will Tremble. You do have to buy tickets in advance. And finally, last announcement, if anyone's interested in sponsoring any of these classes, you do have a sheet here with the upcoming calendar, or you can go to chabadkaneo.com/sponsor, and you can help sponsor the class and the lunches that follow. On the table after class is going to be lunch. There's a little basket over there if you'd like to contribute to help the cost of lunch. We've been getting our lunches this year from Pizza Nosh, so if you want to keep the lunches growing, put something in the pot. We started last week chapter 14 of the book of Deuteronomy, and it began with the phrase, Bonim atem la'Hashem Elokeichem, you are children unto God, and then immediately Moses tells the people that when it comes to mourning the death of a loved one, there should not be excessive mourning. The pagan culture was to literally take a knife and bloody themselves as signs of mourning, that they can't go on like this without their loved one, without their father, without their mother, their spouse, their brother, their sister, their son, and their daughter. Immediately Moses says, you are children of the Lord your God. You shall neither cut yourself nor make any boldness between your eyes for the dead. They would shave anything between their eyes, and they would hurt themselves as a sign of mourning. This is pagan culture, and Moses tells them not to engage in it. As we started explaining last week, the two themes of that opening verse go hand in hand. It's because you are children to God that God does not want you involved in excessive mourning. How do we connect the two? If you're children of God, that means there is a part of you that's eternal. Because if you are the child of an eternal, of an infinite God, then there's something about that eternity that you have as well. But you say, but we do die. We live 120 years, or in biblical times, longer times, and then we die. But who says death is eternal? Death is the death of the body, but the soul does live on. There is a heavenly world. So if we believe in this faith, if we believe in God, and if we believe in heaven, then yes, there is sadness when there is a passing of a loved one. Why? Because physically you're not with someone. We understand the sadness. But that sadness cannot be excessive because life does go on a different plane. And that's what we began talking about last week. That we have to start using our faith to believe in things that we don't see with our physical eyes. The heavenly world we don't see. Our loved ones in the heavenly world we don't see with our physical eyes. But our faith has to take us there. One of the great teachers of Torah after the Holocaust in Israel was a headmaster. His name was Rabbi Yisrael Zev Gustman. Rabbi Gustman was called the Rosh Yeshiva, the dean of a big yeshiva in Jerusalem. Now, aside for running this massive school, he also gives classes for the scholars of Jerusalem, from the lay people, lawyers, scientists, mathematicians, judges. He gives Talmud classes to some of the bright ones of Jerusalem. One of those that attended this class was Professor Aumann. Professor Aumann, for those of you that follow the Nobel Prizes, was quite famous in 2005. He received the Nobel Prize in Economics. It was a great day of pride for Israel that one of their own won the Nobel Prize in Economics. Professor Aumann is a brilliant man. He always attended Rabbi Gustman's classes. In June of 1982, Professor Aumann's son, his son's name was Shlomo, was a young father whose wife was then expecting her second child. And if you remember 1982, there was a war in Lebanon. What else is new? And Aumann's son, Shlomo, was called up to fight in the war in Lebanon. And tragically, Shlomo was killed in action before his second child was born. So Rabbi Gustman and all of the students of the yeshiva went to the funeral of the professor's son, who he knew quite well. After the burial was over, the elderly rabbi started walking amongst the grave sites of all the buried soldiers and just started weeping of the loss of life. And he would say these words over and over. People heard him say, Kulam Kedoshim, they're all holy, the holy souls of our people, the holy souls. Kadosh is that word holy, and he was using that word over and over to describe all those buried in this section of the cemetery. On the way home, Rabbi Gustman asked that he be taken to the Aumann home where they were going to sit Shiva, that he wanted to participate as well in the Shiva of his student. And so he comes to the Aumann house, immediately is given a seat right next to where the professor was sitting Shiva, and he sat quietly for a while. At some point, the professor says to his rabbi, look, I am touched, deeply touched, that you took the time off from running your school to be at the funeral. I'm deeply touched that you came here to be with me at the Shiva home. But don't feel that you need to stay here too long. I know how busy your schedule is. It's okay if you have to leave and go back to the yeshiva. Rabbi Gustman was quiet for a moment and then started to speak. And he says this to Professor Aumann and to everyone else that's there. Most of you do not know that I had a son. His name was Meir. He was a beautiful child. And the Nazis came and they kicked down my door. They just bursted right in. I was holding my Meir at the time, and they took my son and they shot him in front of my eyes. I was able to escape that night. The only thing that I had left for my son, somehow his shoes stayed in my hands. I wouldn't let go of his shoes. As I continued running and running and running, I was starving. And so I traded my son's shoes for some food. But then when I looked at the food, I couldn't eat the food, knowing that I got this food from selling my son's shoes. I couldn't bring myself to eat the food. So I gave the food to other starving Jews. At least they should eat. My mayor, he says to Professor Oman, and all the 6 million, they were all holy. Every one of them was holy. As much as I've tried to block out that evening from my mind, how could you? And I relive it, and I relive it, and I relive it. And I keep thinking about those shoes. Every night before I go to sleep, I see the shoes. Rabbi Guzman paused for a moment, and then he continued. And he said, Professor Oman, I want to tell you what I think is going on right this moment in the heavenly world. Right now, my mayor is welcoming your Shlomo. And he's telling him, come join us in our congregation here in the heavenly world. He's welcoming you in. He knows that the two fathers are friends, so let's be friends up here in heaven. It'll give our fathers some nachas down below that we're friends up here. And my mayor is saying to your Shlomo that I died just because I was a Jew, but I wasn't able to save anyone else. But you, Shlomo, you died defending the Jewish people. You died defending the land of Israel. And therefore, you lead our congregation. The rabbi then lowered his voice and he told the bereaved father, Professor Oman, he said, I never had the opportunity to sit Shiva for my mayor. So if it's okay with you, I'd like to spend some more time here. As you mourn your Shlomo, I will mourn my mayor. And perhaps, tonight when I go to sleep, I will no longer have those nightmares, as knowing that my mayor and your Shlomo are together in the heavenly world. Professor Allman looked up at Rabbi Guzman and said with tears in his eyes, I didn't think anyone could find words to give me comfort on this day, and your words gave me comfort. The words don't take away the sadness. The mourning is real. But at the same time, our faith can take us to a place, to a heavenly place, in where we can feel that their existence goes on. The life did not come to a permanent end. It came to an end on this plane. But eternally they live on. Death has never caused us as a Jewish people to give up on life. Think of it, us as a nation. It's shocking, considering what our people have been through. The pogroms, the expulsions, the inquisitions, the Holocausts, the October 7th. We've been through death. We've seen death like no other nation on the face of the earth, and yet we carried on. We never allowed death to mark us and shut us down. We saddened. We felt the tragedy. We sat the Shiva, but we got up. Think about this just for a moment. What a post-Holocaust generation built as survivors. Just think, had they given up, had they said, it's over, we throw in the towel. Think about that generation. Were they sad? Certainly. Did they cry often thinking of their loved ones? Certainly. Did they say Kaddish? Certainly. all of that. But they also knew that it was on their shoulders to keep it going, to carry it on, and they did. In Eretz Yisrael, in America, and all over the world. We are here because of their strength, because of their determination, because of their resilience. That's why we're still here. And I think we're here stronger than ever. Death did not allow us to give up on life because Moses told us, you are children unto God, and therefore no excessive mourning. It became part of our psyche that there are these aspects of mourning. You know, you can't wallow in the pain. You can't wallow in the misery. You can't allow it to bring you into a state of depression that you can't get out of. You could look at what Moses' words, and he may be talking literally about the pagan culture going on. Don't cut yourself up. But perhaps there's also this symbolic cutting yourself up emotionally that Moses is saying to us. Don't put yourself in a state where you will never recover, that you'll never pick up the pieces. So we have Shiva, the 7 days of mourning. We have Shloshim, that's a 30-day period of mourning. We have that first year of mourning. We have different periods of time where the mourning begins to get less and less. Until after that first year, we have to be back into life. We say Kaddish for 11 months. You know, Kaddish is not a prayer for the dead. If you've ever read the English translation of the Aramaic words, it doesn't say one word about being dead. Kaddish is about living. It's a prayer for life. It's a prayer for carrying on. It's a prayer for bringing godliness into this world, even though I am suffering and pain. Think about Yizkor. We just had Yizkor on Yom Kippur and on Shmini Atzeres. We'll have it again, Passover and Shavuot. What is Yizkor all about? It's not simply about remembering, because I remember my father and mother every single day. I don't need a special holiday where I remember my father, my mother, my grandfather, my grandmother. What is Yizkor? Yizkor are periods of time in which God allows the souls of our loved one to leave their heavenly abode and come back onto earth and be with us in the room. That's powerful. That's not just saying a name I want to remember, have some good thoughts and good memories. That's reconnecting. That's rebonding. That's saying to a father or to a mother or to a husband or to a wife or to a son and daughter, I'm here. Hold me. Embrace me. Now, how much we would wish that that would be in a physical manner. But not everything about our faith isn't physical. And so our faith tells us that Yizkor is a time where we truly feel their presence. Because death is not eternal. There's this beautiful parable in the Medrash. It tells us to imagine. So join me in this Midrashic journey of imagining. I want you to imagine a pair of twins, and they're resting comfortably in their mother's womb. It's the early stage of pregnancy. Their mouths are closed. They are being fed through tubes that enter into their navels without having to exert any effort of their own. It's all automatic. They're being kept warm in the fluids of the embryonic sac. And that sac, that's their entire world. That's all the space they need to exist. Everything is wonderful. Everything is peaceful. Everything is sheltered for them. And they can't envision at this stage any possibility of there being anything other than this existence as they know it. Now let's move forward. They're still in their mother's womb, but it's getting closer. And let's imagine that these twins have been suddenly given the gift of consciousness. They're able to think out loud, and they're able to communicate with each other. Things are starting to change in there. Slowly but surely, we're slipping lower than we were the day before. Things are moving around differently than it was 2 months ago. So they begin to wonder, where is this going? What's happening? Now, these two twins happen to be different personalities. This is again what the Medrash is asking us to imagine. One of the twins is an optimist by nature, a believer. The other has the personality of a pessimist, of a skeptic. And the brothers start to debate with one another. The believer says, I think there is a whole new existence waiting for us after we leave this house. It doesn't make sense that God would have us in here for 9 months, cared for us, fed us, allowed us to grow, allowed us to develop, only for it to just come to an end without any purpose. There must be a greater plan. Although we don't know it yet, we're soon going to find out. I'm sure that all of this experience that we've had in life is just a preparation for what's to follow. There's no way that the only thing we have to look forward to is oblivion. That's the optimist talking. The brother, he says to his optimistic twin, there you go again. You're confusing your hopes with reality. Look around you. This is existence. This is our home. There is no other home. There's nothing else outside of this. There's no existence outside of this. This is it. And when this is over, it's over. It's done. The believing brother doesn't get discouraged. And he explains patiently, no, this is what I'm imagining. Once we leave this house, we're going to become more independent. We'll have other ways of getting food and nourishment. I don't know how, but there's something else. Maybe we'll even be able to move around with more space than this 4-inch condominium here. In fact, maybe we'll be able to talk and walk and think and do and build and create for ourselves. And his brother makes fun of him. What proof do you have of these fantasies? You have none. So stop dreaming. Let's live here as long as we have, and when it's over, it's over. And this debate continues for their final weeks of pregnancy until one day it happens. The water inside the womb bursts. There's a great deal of pushing and pounding, and the twins realize they're being forced out. The believer is first to go. His brother, still inside, listens closely for any hint of what might be going on, and he hears his brother cry. I was right all along. I was right all along. I just heard this scream of terror, this scream of death. This is the end of life. What a tragedy. Says the Medrash, what the pessimist did not hear is on the other side, someone yelling, Mazel Tov, it's a boy. All he heard was the scream, but he didn't hear of the celebration. And very soon he will come into this existence, and he too will be celebrated as the birth of these two twins. What appears from a limited perspective to be the end of life was actually the beginning of a higher form of existence. So too, says the Medrash, death is not the end of life. It's the transition whereby our souls are granted freedom to soar above physical limitations of our bodies. This is our sack. For the twins, that was their sack, and they continued into a different existence, says the Medrash, and it will continue again into another existence. It's a transition from one existence to the next. But it doesn't end. The body ends, but the soul doesn't end. And the soul is you. That existence continues. And that existence will be without physical limitations because it will be in a heavenly existence. So, if everything about our lives is defined by the physical, if that's the type of life we live, that it's all physical and it's all material, then it becomes very difficult to imagine any existence beyond the physical. That's all we're focused on, and that's all we see. If it's all about the body, if it's all about the wants and the needs and the desire of the body, then once the body goes, it's over. And that's why death can be frightening, because it has the ring of permanence to it. It's over. The body is put into the ground, the body becomes dust, becomes food for the worms. It's over. Existence has come to an end. That's why there can be excessive mourning, because there's nothing to give me comfort. The person I love is no longer part of this existence. What is existence without them? How do I go on without them? Why do I want to go on without them? And so if you only have a material existence, then indeed death can be excessive. The mourning of death can be excessive. Says Moses to us, but you're not just the body. You're spiritual beings, you're God's children, you have souls. If you connect to that, then life is far more than just the body. And that soul is eternal, just like God is eternal. Somebody once approached Rabbi Dr. Abraham Twersky, wrote many books, wonderful author, great rabbi, and great doctor. He was a quite well-known psychiatrist, made Aliyah to Israel in his latter years, passed away during COVID time. A wonderful, wonderful man. Someone asked him a simple question, and he gave a very simple, powerful answer. The question was, how do you know that you have a soul? How do you know you have a soul? We keep talking about neshama, the soul. How do you know you have a soul? And he said, I don't have a soul. I am a soul. I have a body. It's such a great answer, because we tend to think of it, body, I know I have. How do I know I have a soul? He's saying, no. What you are, existence, that's your soul. You've been given a body. That's a temporary structure for the soul. Who you are is the soul. Try this exercise without getting too dizzy. If I say, who are you? Don't give me your name. Not your name. I'm asking, who are you? Start thinking about you. You're more than a name. A name is what your parents decided to call you, but you existed before they gave you a name. So you're more than just a name. Who are you? What are you going to do? You're going to point to your arms? Are your arms really you? Is that really the essence of you? The more you start thinking, who are you? The real you, you realize there is a spark, there is an essence, there's something deep, there's a consciousness. You can't point to a brain or a heart either. It's more than that. Consciousness, that's the soul. I am a soul. I have a body that's been given to me so that my soul can express itself in this physical world. And after 120 years, when I leave this world, my soul will have other means to express itself to other souls in the heavenly world, and have the means to express itself to loved ones down below in the physical world. And so our loved ones in the heavenly worlds do find means and ways to communicate with us. Whether it's through dreams, whether it's through divine providence, in whatever type of way, listen closely and they communicate with us. Even though, quote unquote, they're dead. Because our definition of death is not the pagan definition of death. Life carries on in a transitional form, in a different plane. If we understand that our souls are the gift that God himself breathed into us, that there's a divine essence within us, that that is our very identity, then you don't have to be a great mystic to infer that just as God is eternal, part of ourselves is also eternal. Yes, there is an afterlife. We call it Olam Haba, a world to come. And we'll know more about it when we get there. And we're in no rush to know more about it, because we don't want to get there so fast. When we have to get there, we'll get there. But for now, The practical relevance to an afterlife is, in our current state, is that we make the most out of the existence that we have here on earth. That we make it count. That we make every precious moment on earth count. And we make sure to leave an impact that will outlive us, so that when we do leave this world, we've left an impression on this world. We left this world different than when we entered it. Verse number 2. And I will read verse number 2. And again, for the benefit of those not in the classroom, just listen to the words. If you have a Bible, a Chumash near you, you can turn to the book of Deuteronomy, chapter 14, verse number 2. And I'll tell you now, we're going to be on verse 2 for a few weeks. It's not a verse that you could just jump over. Ki am kadosh ato Hashem Elokecha. You are a holy people unto God. Ubecha Bachar Hashem. And you, God chose. Lios lo, to be for him, la'am segula, a treasured people, mikol ha'amim, out of all the nations, asher al pnei ha'adama, that are upon the face of the earth. The source of us being a chosen people is right there in that verse. I'm going to show you verses showing this from the book of Genesis, working our way all the way through. But it doesn't get clearer than this. Ki becha bachar Hashem. God chose you. So let's take a step back. Let's rewind the clock. Let's go to 2,000 years from Adam and Eve's creation. We have the first 2,000 years. We know a little bit about it. We know about Adam and Eve. You know about Cain and Abel. You know about a story of Noah. You know a little bit about it. And most of the story that we know about it are not that good. There were a few good players, but a lot of actors that were not necessarily that good. The world has been through a flood. The world has been through the generation of the Tower of Babel, the experiment of a world in which God would create creations that have free choice, which again, those of you that ever studied the book of Genesis with me, to me, that free choice is the greatest of all creations of God. It's the most puzzling of all creations, that a creator can create a will of a creation that could do something that the creator says not to do. Did you follow me on that? When God creates the sun will do whatever God says. The moon, the galaxies, Mars, whatever he creates, they will do whatever God dictates in the DNA creation of this creation. The one exception is the human being. The human being, God says, don't eat from that tree. And the next verse tells us that they ate from the tree. That to me is mind-boggling. I know we all get carried away just focusing on the story of why did Eve do it, why did Adam Eve did do it, why did the serpent do it. All of that is good. But to me, it's, wow, it works. Free will works. That a human being just created by God can do something that the creator said not to do. The guy that designs a computer, that computer can only do what the one designing that computer allows it to do. And here God says, don't do that. And the human being is able to do it. So this experiment of free choice backfires. It doesn't work out well. The experiment is failing for 2,000 years. You have individuals using their free will for the good, but the vast majority are using it to do things that God says not to do. Along comes a man. His name is Abraham. And as I mentioned last week, it's not just that Abraham was good, because Noah was good too. And Shem was good too. Hanoch was good too. There were other good characters before. But Abraham wanted to do something about it. He wanted to spread this belief in God. He wanted to spread the idea of kindness over evil. He campaigned for it. He went door to door for it. He spoke to strangers about it. Now we have a character. We have someone on the face of the earth that wants to make a difference. We didn't have that for 2,000 years. And God speaks and reveals himself to this character, to Abraham. At that point, his name is Abraham. And God will speak to him. And God will tell him, we're starting something new. I would say like, take two of the creation of the earth is about to begin. The emergence of Abraham. His role is going to be that he believed in one and only God. The idea of ethical monotheism, that there's one God, and this one God wants us to be good. This one God cares that we are good, does not want us to be evil, that human beings have a responsibility to influence and inspire others. That's a revolution in his time. That he was going to father a new nation is what God is going to tell him. And that he was going to be this, what I call the chariot for God. He was going to be the one to introduce God to the world. Ladies and gentlemen, I now present to you God Almighty, your Creator. That was going to be his responsibility. And his main characteristic and his personality that led the way was chesed, kindness. He was going to accomplish this by being kind. Let me read to you some text. Again, none of you here have the text in front of you. None of you in the audience out there have the text in front of you. So just listen. This is text from Genesis. It's from the portion of Lech Lecha, which we just read last week. God says to Abraham, go from your land, from your birthplace, from your father's house to the land that I will show you. I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you and make you great, and you shall become a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and he who curses you I will curse. All the families on the face of the earth will be blessed through you. Anyone ever read Thomas Cale's book, The Gifts of the Jews? A wonderful, wonderful book. Thomas Cale is not a Jewish fellow, so sometimes it's better coming from the outside perspective, looking in. Look from the outside looking in. He wrote a book, The Gifts of the Jews. Let's look historically as to how the Jews changed the face of the earth. If you haven't read it, order it on Amazon. I don't get a commission on it. I'm not related to Thomas Cale, but I find it to be a wonderful read because it's a step-by-step look. And any book written by Paul Johnson on the history of the Jews, I would add to that list as well. Again, a wonderful look. Paul Johnson's a Christian historian. Wonderful read of understanding the history of the world and the impact the Jewish people have had it. And Cahill writes, and I quote from his book, there is no reason to think that Abraham knew where he was going or anything more than what his God had told him, that he was to go forth. The Hebrew imperative, the words lech lecha, has an insistent immediacy that English cannot duplicate. Lech lecha, it's like go now, that this is the mission of all missions, on a journey of no return to the land that I will show you. That this God would somehow make of this childless man a great nation, and that all humanity will eventually find blessing through him. And so he concludes that the two most powerful words in all of literature are the words Vayelech Avram, and Abraham went. Because he says, after those two words, that Abraham goes on the mission, nothing of existence is ever the same again. All of existence of every human being on the face of the earth that ever lived from then and that ever will live is different because of those two words. And thus, Cahill concludes, the most powerful two words of all of literature. He changes existence. Now, if we had lived back then, and we were part of whatever culture, nation that lived nearby, and we see this old man beginning a journey, and we say, where are you going, Abe? He says, I don't know, wherever God tells me to go. What do you think we would think of him, his chances of ever becoming a somebody? He's not powerful. He doesn't have an army. He doesn't have the wealth of other barons. And yet this man and this journey and this mission is going to change every single thing about the world. The journey will begin. It's a new start for Abraham. It's a new start for what's going to be the Jewish family. It's a new beginning. It's a new life, a new place, a new start for the world. But that last sentence of what I quoted you, and all the families of the earth shall be blessed through you. If I had to summarize, and trust me, I'm not summarizing, because as I said, I'm going to take a few weeks on this. But if I had to summarize into one sentence, an understanding of what does it mean that you're a chosen people, it's to bring blessings to all the families on the face of the earth. If we truly understand that, if we understand that we're no longer hiding from this word, thinking it sounds arrogant, it comes across as arrogant, what does it mean we're the chosen people? You are chosen to bring blessings to the families of the face of the earth. You're chosen to bring goodness to earth. Now you want to know how. How are you going to go about it? I got our 5 books of Moses to start with, to study, so that we can begin to understand what this mission is about, what this journey is about. But it all begins here. This is how it starts. This concept of a chosen people has been attacked by our enemies. Anti-Semites have used it throughout all of time. They're arrogant. They're trying to take over the world. I mean, we've heard it. In 1973, there was the ambassador, the Soviet ambassador to the United Nations. And in this very monumental speech, he said, the Zionists have come forward with the theory of the chosen people. And he called it religious racism. And that's what began, if you remember back in the 70s and 80s, this idea of Zionism equals racism, the condemnation by the United Nations of Zionism. That the United Nations declared that Zionism is racism. It started from that Soviet ambassador's speech. Thank God it got reversed and it's no longer part of the United Nations Charter. But this idea that because we have this word chosen people, that we're racist, that we're arrogant, it literally comes from just a misunderstanding of what it means. The Protocols of the Elders of Zionism. What's that book about? We're trying to take over the world. George Bernard Shaw, not one of our friends, said, if the Nazis would only realize how Jewish their notion of an Aryan superiority was, they would drop it. He compared the concept of being a chosen people with Nazism. But this attack was not limited just to anti-Semitism. For many years, from within the Jewish people, there's been, let's hide this chosenness business. Let's sweep it under the rug. Let's not focus on it too much. Let's not talk about it too much. I'm going to read to you from what was called the Pittsburgh Platform of 1885. This was a convention of so-called Jewish leaders coming together. And we're going to change the way Judaism is perceived. And they issued a platform. This was the famous Pittsburgh Platform of 1885. I'm only going to read you one paragraph from this platform to show you how far this was going. We recognize in the modern era of universal culture of heart and intellect, we consider ourselves no longer a nation, but a religious community. And therefore, expect neither a return to Palestine, nor a sacrificial worship under the sons of Aaron, nor the restoration of any of the laws concerning the Jewish state. Let's stop this business about we're dreaming of Israel, we're dreaming of a holy temple, we're different. Let's stop all of that. We're going to preserve the historical identity as history alone. It was our grandma's culture once upon a time. That means we're going to make a museum. We're going to have exhibits. But we are to become part of a universal faith. To become one human family with different parts. As late as 1939, that was 1885. We have a Rabbi Goldison, who, again, at a convention, if we insist, as I believe we should, upon the moral basis and universal validity of democracy, We should at the same time emphasize less and less the particularism in our Jewish heritage. Be Americans. Be part of the culture. One faith, we're one people, all religions. We have a background. Backgrounds belong in museums. But we will focus less and less on the particularisms of Judaism. This was this discomfort with being something different. We just have to be the same. It became very uncomfortable to say that we have a unique mission, that there's something unique about us. And I say it's all because of a lack of understanding of what the mission really is all about. If we focus on these original words of how it was presented to us, the words in Genesis, the words in Deuteronomy, it's about bringing blessings to the face of the earth, to all the families on the face of the earth. And you'll get that point when we remain unique. We remain an Am Kadosh, a holy people, as defined by the Torah. We'll continue with this next week. I invite all of you to join me again next Wednesday, 12:30 Pacific time. We're going to shut down the Zoom and the Facebook and YouTube soon. I'll take any questions from the audience over here. Those out there in the Facebook, YouTube world, if you have questions, you can always email me at rabbi@chabadkaneo.com. Don't promise you an answer right away, but at some point I'll get to your email.